friends. I'm going to start letting folks into the room as we are getting ready for session number 3 with Passing the Peace. Tonight being led by Raphael, Guillen, and Wendy Davidson, a wonderful program they created for some of our online camps this summer. LGBTQIA plus workshop called Pride. As everyone's coming into the room right now, we welcome you. We're really glad that you're here with us. If you could do me a favor and go ahead and mute yourselves, open up that chat box as well and take a chance to introduce yourself. We're hoping you might introduce yourself by saying your name, your pronouns, and where you're from, as well as any other information you might like to share with us. We did favorite ice cream flavors one day. That was a lot of fun. Folks are coming into the room right now. We've got Raphael and Wendy here with us already and are very excited for their program. Welcome, everyone. Hi, Pat. So glad to be with us.
I'm glad to be here.
It's great to see you.
Good to see you all.
Hey, Pat.
Hey.
Yeah, see, this just went from a justice seminar to a family reunion, so it's a good thing.
That's right.
Wendy and Raphael, if it's okay with you, let's give folks another minute or two to be able to show up, and we'll let them into the room. For folks who are already here, you can go ahead and take a second to fill in that chat box. Let us know who you are. We're asking folks to introduce themselves with names, pronouns, and where you are from. Since it's a little bit later today for our start time, how about as a fun introductory question as well? Tell me what's for dinner tonight. Maybe you've had dinner already, maybe you're having dinner later. I live vicariously through everyone else's meals, especially this summer when we couldn't really go out and get all of our favorite meals. What's for dinner tonight, everybody? Breakfast. Linda, I love that. Breakfast for dinner was big in my household. Pork chops and grilled veggies. Sounds great, Pat. This turnabout is fair play. I should plug something in here too.
I love camp meals. Everything's grilled.
Ooh, Caribbean fish. Yeah, I might need to ask you for that recipe. Peanut butter, Wendy, well done. every now and again, someone asks me why I always throw in a random question into introductory comments for folks. And it's not just because of my quirky personality and because I grew up in camp and I love camp conversation starters. But there's a pragmatic reason for it too, and it's because when we get used to just saying the same things over and over again, oh, this is my name, or this is where I'm from, we don't really take the time to think about what we're saying and what we're hearing. And so sometimes by throwing in that little random sidebar question, it gets folks to re-engage in the space. It just so happens that I also love food, which is why I ask people what their favorite ice cream is. I ask people what dinner is going to be. So there is a personal piece to it, but there's a group dynamic piece as well. And you can ask the peace interns over the summer. I've probably had them introduce themselves with 30 different random questions. Wendy and Raphael, I will keep an eye on the participant panel to be able to let in anybody else who comes and joins us. But if you all are ready, I'm happy to turn it over to you. Quick word of introduction. Wendy and Raphael are two of our 2020 DPF Peace interns. It has been a summer unlike any other. And so when the invitation started coming from some of our online camps about what sort of workshops could be put together and could be shared, the very first one, Raphael jumped at and said, I've got one. And Wendy jumped in to assist. And it was this Pride workshop that you all are about to hear and be a part of. I'm really excited that they're getting the opportunity to share it with you all. We are also recording this entire session so that we'll have the resource available afterwards as well, which is one of the incredible bonuses that we got this summer, is that we have the opportunity to use some of this technology that's allowed us to connect, to also to be able to capture these stories and use them hopefully for years into the future. So I'm really grateful for that. Wendy, Raphael, I turn it over to you, and I am going to take over some of the tech deck responsibilities for them.
Thanks, Brian. So my name is Wendy Davidson, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. We're actually going to start with a video. For those of you who were able to make it on Friday, we started with a Lectio Divina, a prayer practice. We're going to be starting with a prayer practice again today, but this one is also going to be scripture-based, but it's going to be a little bit different. So we're going to share a video with you to hopefully help contextualize the scripture in a little bit different light.
Still survives, you at least are still alive. I got things you won't believe. Name your pleasure, I will sell. I can fix your wildest need. I got heaven, I got hell. Hold on up, for my price is down. Come on in for the best in town. Take your pick of the finest wine. Lay your bets on this bird of mine. What you see is what you get. No one's been disappointed yet. Don't be scared, give me a try. There is nothing you can buy. Name your price, I got everything. Hurry, it's all going fast. For real cash on the finest terms. Hurry now, our stock still lasts. You at least are still alive.
Then they came to Jerusalem, and Jesus entered the temple and began to drive out those who were selling and those who were buying in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves. And he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. He was teaching and saying, "Is it not written, 'My house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations'? But you have made it a den of robbers." Did you notice anything different hearing the scripture this time, a scripture that many of us have heard many times before, after having watched this video, this retelling in a different context? Feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat.
Wendy, it wasn't necessarily new, but it's when I've heard this story retold, it often has a piece that makes it a violence of Jesus against people. And to me, it's always important that when I hear this, that's not what Jesus did. It wasn't about the people. It was about upsetting the tables. It was about disrupting what was happening. It wasn't about injuring anybody. It was disrupting what was happening. And it's always foremost in my brain, because I know growing up a couple times, I heard that story. Then when you read it for yourself, you're like, wait a second, that's not what happened. That it's about the disrupting, not about hurting other people.
Yeah, I was really struck by Den of Thieves, Den of Robbers, and the way the Broadway musical demonstration that each thing that was there, it was drugs, it was military armaments, it was things that steal life from people. And to think about what it was to turn this holy place into a den of thieves. Instead of being a place that gives life, it was a place that was taking life from people. That there are things that are stealing, robbing life and vitality from us, and Jesus comes to turn those upside down.
Yeah.
I'd like to add that I always have felt like it's making room for change. Get these things out of here. Let's make room for change.
For me, it's addressing systems, not just a particular moment, or like Pat was saying, it's not hurting people, it's disrupting a system that is unjust and uses people in that time and place.
These are all really, really good reflections. Well, in that case, unless anybody else has something that they would like to share. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. So we're going to be playing a game today, which means that I need y'all to play the game today. It should be fun. It's called Fishbowl. Have any of you ever heard of or played Fishbowl before? Seeing a nod, and I'm seeing a head shake. Okay. We'll see how many rounds we have time for. So I will be sending in the chat to individuals whatever word is going to be your word. So we will go around from person to person, and it looks like people are alphabetical. So I will warn you, and like as we move from each person, I will warn you. Bill and Mary Jacobs, y'all are up first. Bruce, you're on deck. And then after you have 1 minute to try and get the rest of the group to guess as many of the words as possible, and I will be sending you your words in the chat. So yeah, don't leave that just yet, Brian. The first round is taboo. So I'm gonna show you an example. Just want to click to the next slide. So say, for example, your word is aromantic. So the word aromantic, next slide, literally means a lack of romantic attraction. It is an orientation. So like somebody might identify as gay or as bisexual, somebody might identify as aromantic, which is a romantic attraction, a romantic orientation rather than a sexual orientation. But next slide, you can't just say, whenever you're trying to get people to guess this, lack of romantic attraction, because romantic is in the word itself. So you're going to have to come up with a different way of saying it. For example, next slide. You might say when somebody only wants platonic relationships, they might identify as, and then hopefully everybody else would chime in and go, aromantic. If you don't know the word, another option is to break it down. So next slide, maybe you don't know what aromantic means. Well, instead you can break it up into component parts that you do know what they mean. So if you're trying to get somebody to guess, like Roman is in the middle, I know what that is. So a centurion would be a Roman, trying to get people to guess that. Or for the A, the indefinite article, tick, a biting insect that can carry Lyme disease. Get people to guess the component parts. If somebody has said Roman, you can go ahead and say that. So if somebody guesses A and then somebody guesses Roman, you can say a Roman, and hopefully that'll also help get people going. Okay, so that's it for basics, general taboo tips. Go one, well, I guess you don't necessarily need to go one more further because we are going to open up the timer. So as soon as the timer is up, Bill and Mary Jacobs, y'all are up first. Bruce, you are on deck. Ready? You're gonna have to unmute yourself. Probably everybody wants, well, whoever is going to be guessing, unmute. And then if you have a guess, unmute yourself so that you can share it. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
All right, let's see. We haven't seen it yet.
We don't have a word.
It's not coming through.
File. Do we open the file?
It should be in the chat.
Okay, and it says file. So I'll look at the file.
Oh,
No.
shouldn't be a file.
All right, I don't have it. Sorry.
Are you getting the testing?
It says privately, and it
Yes.
says Wendy.
Okay, finally.
Yes. Okay, so that first one is your word.
Oh, I see.
Pull along.
Very short word. And a person might dress in this form.
Oh, drag.
Yeah.
So you have 1 minute. Keep going. You have 1 minute to try and get people to guess as many of these as possible.
Someone said the word, I thought.
Brian said drag.
Yes, Brian said drag. So you've got a minute to try and get people to guess the rest of them. I just sent you another
Oh,
word.
the rest of them.
I got it.
Go into a classroom and
No, that word is testing. We're not going to use that word. So the word on the very bottom that isn't testing describes a person whose attraction is not to one gender or the other, but equal to both, or alternates, or has opportunities and affinities to.
Bisexual?
Yes.
Hey, there you go. Okay,
Goody, you did it.
Yay!
good job. We've got 2 of them. Oh, Diana, you're up next. Bruce has hopped out. So Diana, you're up next. Jen, you are on deck. Ready? Diana?
Oh, I'm in chat
Okay, did you get the testing?
testing.
Okay. Ready, Brian? Whenever you're ready, Diana.
Oh, not quite sure I know what it means.
Can you break it down into smaller words or even sounds for us, Diana?
Male or female, this person is male or female. Neither. I would have to look up the word because I'm not exactly sure.
Does it start with A?
No, it does not.
Gender?
You're close though, you're very close with the A.
Asexual?
Somebody just threw out gender.
No,
so you
not
can
a-
start saying gender in your explanations.
Okay. Gender and 3 letters before.
Non-binary. Non.
Cisgender.
Cis, yes.
Yeah.
Good job, Pat.
Yeah. Jen, are you ready to go?
Sure.
Okay. 1. Okay. Bro, Brian, you ready?
Yep, I'm ready. 3, 2, 1.
This person is not, it's like another name for lesbian. Is there a lesbian?
What? I couldn't understand what you
Another name
said.
for lesbian.
Okay, lesbian.
Is there a lesbian, another word for that?
Epic.
Say the word that I know.
Like in the same gender.
Gay.
Yes. Jennifer or Daniel, one of those 2. It's not until like 7:55 they said. Okay. Sorry. Wow. If I'm not answering, I am
questioning.
Yes.
Wow.
Good guess.
Buzzer, well done.
I'm impressed. Kim, it looks like you just jumped in on the call. Are you okay to go, or do you want to wait and watch for another round?
No, I've been here the whole time.
Oh,
yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, ready?
Yeah. I don't have my word yet, though. Okay, got it.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
Okay. Let's see. This person, so there's male and there's female, and this person is somewhere else.
Does it start with A?
No, it does not.
With N?
Yes.
Non-binary?
Yes, good.
Didn't hear what the answer was.
It was non-binary.
Non-binary.
We have another word probably.
Okay, this one is a person who is born with both male and female organs.
Intersex.
Yes, that's it. Okay, this is a person who is oh
Yeah, great job, Kim.
What was your word, Kim?
should I say it or is it going to go to the next?
It'll come back up. It'll come back up.
Okay.
Great.
Linda, are you ready to go next?
Sure.
Whenever you're ready.
Not curvy.
Straight.
Not what?
Straight.
Oh,
Yeah.
not crooked.
When you see a smile, when you see sadness, you are seeing what on somebody's face?
Emotion.
Emotion.
Close. More
Feelings?
than that.
Expressions?
Expressions.
Yes. And then that's the second word. The first word is
Gender expressions?
I'm sorry?
Is it gender expressions?
Yes. Not gay, and it's a female.
Lesbian?
Yes.
Y'all are doing great.
You're here.
Pat, you're up next. You ready?
Okay. Pressure's on now because you all did so well.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
I don't have it yet.
Tap down on it.
Okay, now I got a testing.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
When you're happy about something, about some aspect of yourself, you have good feelings about it.
Pride.
Yes, good job.
Nice.
When you want to make sure that other people have equal rights, you're working towards these goals, peace and
Justice?
justice. If you're not going into a place, you might be
Coming
out.
very good. In New York, this is where the riot was to start the Stonewall. Good job. And this is the, for lack of a better term, sex that you say, this is who I am. This is
Identified.
close.
That's okay. You did great. You did great. That was, yeah. Who's up next?
Nancy is below.
Nancy. Nancy, you ready?
Okay. Yes. This is going to be in the chat box.
Yes. Did you get
Okay.
the testing?
Yes.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
Okay. How we describe who someone is?
Gender identity?
Yes. Okay, do I have to go back to look for a new one? Oh, now I can see it. Wait. Okay. Maybe all encompassing?
Inclusive?
No.
Good guess.
Yeah, it is a good guess. Let me see another way to describe it. At the end, towards the end of a string of letters.
That was a hard
Well,
one. You got a couple of really hard ones.
Description.
How about LGBTQIA, etc.?
Good guess.
Are we working on a
Raphael,
string
do you
of-
want to play?
Yeah, that's but you didn't say the actual phrase, but that's it.
I can play.
alphabets? I don't know what's your phrase you're looking for.
I have my word. Okay, well, maybe we can get it whenever Raphael gives us some clues. Okay.
All right, Raphael's turn in 3, 2, 1.
When your identity is when you're not male or female, you're somewhere outside, but you're not non-binary.
Gender fluid?
Gender is in it, but it's
Okay.
a different. There's a
Gender
different word.
non-conforming?
There's a different word.
Okay.
Right. Is this the same one I had?
I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm asking whoever's hosting it. Because I don't want to say it if it is.
Yes. Yes. it is.
There's a Q in it.
Gender queer.
Oh, genderqueer.
Yes. This is
Good guess. That was a hard one. That was a
Yeah.
hard. It took. It took a lot of us. Brian, I'm going to skip you so that you don't have 17 things going on at once.
Thank you, I appreciate
Bill
it.
and Mary Jacobs, we're back to you.
Get to our chat.
Whenever
All
you're
right, a direction in which a person's affinity and attraction is to them. They are aware that they have a direction in which they direct their
Affection.
romantic energies and affections. And
Well, let's see.
And the second word is much like when you're looking at a map and trying to figure out where you're going. The first word is much more about gender.
Second word is if you were going to college and you were a freshman, you would go for a certain kind of weekend.
Orientation.
Okay, and the first word
Sexual.
is, thank you.
Oh, great. All right.
When many parts of ourselves come together and meet.
Intersection.
Intersectionality.
Okay, I think we're gonna call that got, even if we got it after the time limit. That was good. Diana, you ready? You're up next.
No, but yeah.
You're gonna do great.
You got it, Diana.
Okay. This is my last word. And this is it. When you make a change.
Transgender?
Transition?
Yes.
Oh.
Transgender. Oh, another word. Big red heart stands for what?
Love.
Yes, love. Somebody who's with you in it.
Partner.
Stands by you.
Ally.
Yes. Well. Okay. Frying. You cook
Pan.
eggs in it. A frying pan.
Yeah, pansexual.
Yes.
Again, I guess we're gonna take it even if we got it after the time limit.
We're so happy we got it.
Kim, you're up next. You ready?
Okay, yeah. Okay, this person, does not have certain feelings toward other people. They want to hang out with you, but they don't want to kiss you.
Asexual?
Yes. Okay, so this term describes a lot of different people who have different sexual orientations or gender identities outside of heterosexual or cisgender. So this is sort of an umbrella term for it that used to be considered more of a derogatory term.
Poly.
Homosexual?
I heard somebody say it, but
Polyam.
it's not homosexual or poly.
Yeah. Queer?
Queer?
Queer, it's queer.
And just in time, we finished all of the words.
Yay!
Good job.
Yay, team.
Yes.
Congratulations. I'm very impressed. You did great. You all did you did really, really well. Okay, so were there any words that you were especially familiar with already, or were there any words that were new to you from the game? Brian, if you want to go forward one more slide, then there should be a list of, yeah.
I thought that it wasn't always clear. The word cisgender was not defined during our conversations. Right, Diana? Was a
Right.
difficult one.
Right. And I have a whole file with all of these words in it and explanations, but I don't remember everything. And
Yeah,
so
so
cisgender, yeah, I was not, that word didn't have a meaning for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some of these words are going to be new. Some of these, especially like as people continue to figure out how they identify, we continuously come up with new words to try and better describe our experiences.
Wendy, would you describe cisgender then for Diana?
Yeah, absolutely. So transgender is whenever you identify as not the gender that you were assigned as birth. Cisgender is whenever you do identify as the gender you were assigned at birth. Does that make sense?
Thus, we don't hear it that often.
Right, yeah, it doesn't show up a lot of times, right? Just in the same way that straight didn't show up for a long time. Because it's the default, and so we don't think about it. Are there any other words that were maybe new to you?
I don't think I've heard gender queer. Just queer by itself, but not gender queer.
Right. Yeah. So there are a few different words like gender fluid, gender queer, non-binary, gender non-conforming, that all just kind of mean something slightly different, and there's a lot of overlap between them. Mm-hmm. But that way, like we have the chance to think more closely about the language that we're using and identify with the word, with what fits us best. But it is a lot of new vocabulary to keep up with. I will grant you that.
Stonewall was new to me.
Pansexual was another one.
Pansexual. Mm-hmm.
You got all the hard ones. You got all the ones that didn't make your top 10 list.
Yeah.
I think pansexual refers to a multiple number of orientations toward romantic relationships or sexual relationships. That I think it has to do with orientation. I could be corrected.
Yeah, so pansexual is orientation. So
that would be like panorama, covering
or Pangea.
Yeah.
Great word for everything.
So it's about there's an intentionality behind it, to say, like, so some people who identify as bisexual would say that means they're attracted to people of all genders. Those who identify as pansexual typically have are trying to be more intentional about saying yes, and also specifically non-binary folks, genderqueer folks. So there's a lot of overlap there too between bisexual and pansexual, and it just depends on the person and how they identify.
Gotcha.
I haven't heard Stonewall used in this context.
Well, I'm going to leave that one to Raphael, because that's going to be the kind of subject of their spiel. So, yeah, but good question. Glad you brought that up. Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and move forward? And I will pass it over to Raphael.
All right. First, thank you, Wendy, for doing that wonderful game. I'm sure we all enjoyed it. And first, I want to ask two questions. You could say it out loud and unmute yourself and kind of answer it, or you could put it down in the chat box. First, I want to ask, what comes to mind first when I say Pride Rally? Say a word or a phrase or, anything.
Rainbow.
Rainbow.
Marching.
Marching.
June. I see June.
June, yeah. What was that?
Energy.
Energy.
Public witness.
Right.
Red red flag.
Anybody else for Pride Rally?
Stonewall.
Right?
But you can explain that.
Yeah. All right. And the next question is, what comes to mind when you hear the word riot?
Violence.
Destruction.
Disruption.
Unpleasant. Hurting. Herding and hurting.
Out of control.
All right. Seems like two different polarizing kind of situations between Pride Rally and riot. All right, and next slide. So this workshop is titled "The First Pride Rally Was a Riot," because it was. And we're going to be discussing how that was. Next slide. So before Stonewall, there was a little bit of background situations that happened before Stonewall. One of the first big situations was the Compton cafeteria riots. This happened in San Francisco, California in August of 1966. I don't know if anybody was aware of that. If you were aware of that, drop it in the chat. And so this was a 24-hour cafeteria where trans women, gay men, and drag queens alike would come and eat and commune after going to bars and feeling safe to be out at night. Side note, for most LGBTQ+ folks, both back then and now, going out at night and being in bars are and were the safest places they felt that they could go to, as they were and still are heavily persecuted. Police back then would raid places like bars and cafeterias such as Compton's to arrest and brutalize queer folks. One night in August, a police officer was harassing a trans woman when she threw coffee in his face and started the Compton cafeteria riots. The riot went out into the streets and many were arrested. This event was not well documented because of the lack of police reports and newspaper articles that were written about it. And this riot created a change within the community in the neighborhood where trans youth were aided to be off the streets and put into stable housing. So there on the screen, there are some images. In the left and the right, there's the images of the protests that happened that night, and the nights that night rather, where they had like picket signs and they had protests and riots and everything. They had their fists up in the air, and in the center there they have a little plaque commemorating the location where the riot happened, there in San Francisco. So you can take a look at that for a little while. And next slide. So this is Stonewall, the big moment. This happened in New York City in June 28th of 1969. And the Stonewall Inn was just a regular bar that most queer folks felt safe in. Again, at this time, queer people felt safe that accepted them at night, and police target them at these venues. Marsha P. Johnson was said to be the first one to throw the first brick at Stonewall. This riot incited protests that lasted for days. Historians said that they died off around July 3rd of 1969. However, it did create radical change within the LGBTQ+ community, such as organizations specifically for trans youth, gay men, lesbians, trans and gender variant people, and other queer people in the margins. It also created other movements towards change in the LGBTQ community and general awareness of our existence. And so there's some other pictures of Stonewall. To the left of your screen, there, I believe, there's the plaque of the Stonewall Inn commemorating the event. To the right, there's a raided premises plaque that shows that the bar was raided back then. And in the center, there's the actual bar storefront. And I see Pat was there twice last year to celebrate the 50th anniversary. That's very cool, Pat. Wow. That is so cool. All right. All right, so next slide. Now we're going to be talking about leaders at the forefront. This is an image of Marsha P. Johnson. She was a trans woman of color. She threw the first brick at Stonewall. However, stories did circulate of another trans woman, Stormy De La Veere, can never pronounce her name, who was incited the riot. But Marsha P. Johnson was still at the forefront of the movement, teaming up with Gay Liberation Front and forming the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries with Sylvia Rivera and others. Fun fact, the P in her name stands for Pay It No Mind. Next slide. The video does not work.
Yep, give me just 1 second. I'll pull up the right one for you.
All right. Sylvia Rivera is the next leader who was at the forefront. She was also a trans woman of color, but identified herself as a transvestite, which is an outdated term in regards to the transgender community. She stood with the Gay Liberation Front and formed the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries with Marsha P. Johnson, and fought for homeless youth and was angry towards how the gay liberation movement was. Sorry. It's okay. And so she was angry towards how the gay liberation movement was moving towards a more white, middle-class, male-centered aspect. And here is a video clip of how she was shouting at one of the first gay pride rallies back in, as you can see, 1973, where she gave an amazing speech. This is very hard to find footage where she was speaking up there, so you could see one of the last things she said, which was very impactful, so you could play it.
Revolution now! Give me a G! Give me an A! Give me a Y! Give me a P! Give me an O! Give me a W! Give me an E! Give me an R! Gay power! Louder gay power!
And so if you want to see the entirety of her amazing speech, you can go ahead on YouTube and look up Sylvia Rivera's speech. It's typically the first one that pops up, and you can look up her entire speech. It's amazing. You can go ahead to the next slide. So, and then the aftermath of the first riots and the Pride movements. One of them was the Gay Liberation Front, which we've kind of dabbled in a bit. The Gay Liberation Front, while in the past there were organizations that stood with the gay community, the Gay Liberation Front was the first organization that had the word gay in the title and fought for rights and awareness for the gay community. They stood with other leftist movements such as the Black Panthers, the feminist/womanist movements, and also anti-war movements. And they unfortunately disbanded after not being able to agree how to operate. So there's an image of them holding a rally sometime in the 70s, I believe. Next slide. There's also the Vanguard Street Actions. This was post the Compton Cafeteria riots. Some historians consider this to be one of the first gay liberation organizations in the country. It was a sort of protest to show protection for queer youth that landed in the city of San Francisco. They grabbed brooms to symbolize the sweeps that police would do in the community when they would grab, harass, and kill them, and formally help the youth to get into better situations. And not much is known about this organization after this demonstration. And there you can see where they grabbed the brooms and just kind of swept through the streets, and just as a show of a demonstration to kind of show like, we're here, we're queer, and you're not gonna take us down anymore. So yeah. Next slide. And finally, there's Pride, which 1 year after Stonewall, activists marched in New York City to celebrate and commemorate the date of Stonewall. With word around the nation for the last year, major cities like Chicago and Los Angeles also celebrated with their own marches. As more news spread throughout the years, more cities adopted the marches. And if it wasn't for Stonewall or all the liberation movements before then, there would be no pride and no liberation for all people of the LGBTQ+ spectrum. And that's it. Next slide. And do you have any questions, comments, concerns? What did you think about it, basically?
I'd just like to say I really appreciate this. I think this is a very succinctly dealt with portion of the history, and I think that the history is not well known, and it's helpful for all of us to realize, you know, how we got where we are. That it again, like most movements, it takes brave people to step out and put their selves on the line to get things started. And then we discover, you know, how many people are in like-minded, but it takes somebody to be bold enough to step out and make it happen. So I really appreciate this history.
I do too. I'm not familiar with all this history. I've got to look things up now and read about them.
There are some ways that it feels like, oh, things have changed so much. And there were other ways that I love. One of the first pictures that you pointed out for us, Raphael, with the folks with the signs. And almost every single sign that was being held up in that picture is something that I could have seen at a Black Lives Matter march that we just had here in Cambridge. So many of those sentiments are still so important to the gathering, to the power of the people, to the revolution that is still at work around and among us. So that really jumped out at me.
Yeah, a lot of this history is just not known. A lot of this history is just really kept. A lot of this history actually I learned in my undergrad studies. I actually minored in LGBT studies in my undergrad. And that's how I know about all of this stuff, because like I didn't know about this stuff until I got my minor. And so people don't know about this unless they intentionally look for it, which is unfortunate, because to know to know the future, you have to know the past, is what they usually say, stuff like that. And so we should learn every aspect of history to kind of understand people, understand where people are coming from and stuff like that. So definitely, if you learn something new and you want to learn more, this is just a very basic, surface level kind of Wikipedia aspect. It's barely even Wikipedia aspect of it, You could definitely look more into it. There's plenty of resources online. You could definitely look into it on your free time. I definitely encourage you to do that for sure.
Well, and to shout out one of our partners that DPF has been working so closely with this summer, Alliance Q, for the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. When they were putting together their worship resources for this summer, they literally entitled the worship service Riot, drawing on this history, again, being able to make some of these same connections. It was, for me, one of those amazing, the spirit is moving moments, because I went, oh my gosh, that's exactly what Wendy and Raphael are working on at, different track, coming to the same spot. The spirit at work among us. So if you haven't had a chance to check out the Riot resources that Alliance Q has put together, that could be a place for folks to start diving a little bit deeper as well.
We have a couple final questions. What is something that you learned today? We've started to kind of touch on.
Well, I learned some of these starting groups like the Vanguard, Street Action, and the Gay Liberation Front, and I need to read more about them.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to pull out my list that we have an organization in Detroit, the Ruth Ellis Center, which she provides housing for youth, teens. And she was a Black woman in Detroit, and the teens had nowhere to go who were gay and were kicked out of their homes. So, and they do provide instruction, and we've had some people from church went down, and that's my source of information for the whole dictionary that I have. But I need to keep reviewing it, because cisgender, I know that's on the list. I know I've seen it, but it's words I don't use.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
You are a great source, and I sent the email out to about 6 or 8 other people from church and said, you guys should really send an email and get logged in and come and join this. But I don't see anybody here.
Well, maybe they'll watch the replay. Go ahead.
One thing in the history that I saw was the role that African Americans played in the early movement, Stonewall and other places, and how quickly it was co-opted by the mainstream culture into, we are white and gay and here to make our voice heard. But the first things that we heard were coming from folks who really understood what the police were doing in more than one context.
Yeah, I think that's a very astute observation. Mm-hmm. What's something that you maybe still have questions about that you're going to take away from this space and continue to mull over in the coming weeks? What's something that you're not quite done wrestling with? You don't have to share out loud if you don't want to. Go ahead.
I'm aware that I'm working on making sure I get the alphabet in the right order. I'm very aware of coming into as an ally, as an affirming disciple, as we used to say, that it was GLTBQ, except it wasn't even a Q at that point, and that I'm really aware that that change happened. And I'm trying to get the L first in that. And I learned that that was because lesbians had been so supportive of gay men who had faced AIDS, and they wanted to honor them in that way. Am I correct about that? And so that was a kind of a new learning for me recently. So that's something I'm working on. I was aware a while ago I was writing it again and again to get it in my brain to make sure I say that in a way that honors that. So that's just something I'm working on.
I think the thing that's challenging me is what comes after riot. If we understand that riot began with a disruption, I think it's important to try and figure out what comes after riot. Although, Brian, I have to agree, the worship element of the riot turning over tables gave concrete ways in which that word can be transformed. But just in general, the definitions we gave of riot weren't very attractive. And because it isn't an attractive experience, it's a terrifying experience. And so what can we do once we know things have to change? That seems to me what I'm interested in pursuing from this point on.
I would like to confess that one of the things I struggle with is the use of proper pronouns, because I have my grammar and spelling monkey brain back here keeps wanting to fix things. And so it's a real struggle for me to use the proper pronouns without having to change the rest of the sentence. So I really feel like I stumble over it all the time. So that's one of the things I'm still working on.
I think the question that just remains for me, based on some of the history, is just, how can we work together better? Because it stood out for me when Raphael talked about the Gay Liberation Front working with all these other movements, the Black Panthers and the womanists, the feminists and anti-war. But then sadly, they couldn't work together with, they had difficulties within their own organization. And I mean, we all experience this kind of thing all the time. So and there's so much promise and possibility there of all those movements coming together. And so it's just the ongoing struggle, I think, of how do we all just get along and work together?
Anybody else have anything to add? All right, well, that's it on our presentation. We just want to thank you so much for being here, taking the time to have this conversation. And other than that, that's it. Thank you so much for watching this, if you're watching this on Facebook. And we hope to see you for tomorrow's next Peacemakers training event, which is on the Eco Justice with Wendy and Jennifer. And we'll see you there if you want to be on there. But
Thank
please
you,
come,
Raphael.
because it's going to be cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wendy and Raphael.
Well done, Wendy and Raphael. What a great, great service tonight. Thank you, everyone, for the conversation as well. That was really fabulous. So glad to have everyone involved and participating so well. This was really, really tremendous.
So long, everyone.
Peace be with you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.